Hello and welcome to the Facts Don't Care About Your Feelings podcast. I'm your host, Nathaniel Horton, here as always with Stephen, Kimball, and Ethan. Today, we are going to be discussing some economic thingamabwhatsits. And Stephen's being an idiot. Good grief. Alright, restart. Getting into the Christmas spirit here at the Facts Don't Care About Your Feelings podcast. With that clip from Elf, thank you very much, Stephen. We really needed that. Kimball tried to act it out before the podcast started. It was actually kind of decent.
I'm a narwhal.
Kimball is apparently a narwhal.
I'm as big as a daggum narwhal.
Alright. The issues that we'll be discussing in this podcast include healthcare costs, minimum wage and living wage, and the wage gap, and which we will be describing later. But yeah, let's go ahead and start with some healthcare costs. Do you guys believe that healthcare costs too much in the United States?
Yes. I don't pay for it.
Yes.
My parents do right now.
Do you believe that it costs too much?
Probably.
Healthcare costs too much, and if we privatized it, it wouldn't cost too much.
Stephen?
I would say it probably does, but again, it's consumers to have the power to lower it, and if you don't utilize it, it's also an American citizen problem, not just like people being in debt.
And now we'll go to our resident libertarian, Ethan. How do we lower healthcare costs?
Well, if you remove the regulations, or at least some of the regulations that healthcare companies currently have to abide by, then
It would be chaos.
they would save a ton of money, which would hopefully, if the healthcare companies are smart, go to helping to lower the costs of the healthcare. Because if you aren't spending as much money, then you can lower the cost for your consumers, which might, in the long run, end up making you more money.
Very cool. Let's go to our resident Republican, Stephen. What are your thoughts on healthcare?
He already said it.
Well, I think we have a really good system that promotes competition, and lots of the world's greatest doctors want to come here because they have the chance to make a lot of more profit. And we have a price per capita for healthcare expenditures almost double several countries such as Germany and the Netherlands. But I think that's because of our economic system, not just health issues in America. I think it's that people want profit, and that's why they have high prices.
Well, people also are not very healthy in America too. So
Very true.
That's very true.
Any other thoughts from our resident Kimball?
Our resident women's
That's
equality, Kimball.
It's offensive, but all right.
It's offensive.
It's offensive.
Well,
Equality is offensive.
we'll get on to that when we get to the wage gap. But
I don't know. I mean, right now, what we got going seems like it's working. Is it expensive? Yes. Should it probably be lowered? Sure. But, I mean, it's working right now. If it's working, why change it?
It's not working.
I mean, it is working.
It's
So-
expensive.
Yeah, but it's working.
Several years ago, former President Barack Obama signed into law the healthcare law that has become known as Obamacare. With the Democrats retaking the House, do you think the rest of Obamacare will end up repealed? Do you think they'll try to pass and get the individual mandate back? Or what do you think is going to happen with Obamacare?
They're not going to get it past the Senate no matter what, so it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter what the Democrats do in the House.
I agree with Ethan, but I would hope that they could come up with a solution that would benefit both what people want. Now, as far you got to look at the way the House is voted on and the way the Senate is. The Senate represents more of what
It's not getting passed. It might get to the House, maybe, but there's no point because it ain't getting in the Senate.
right. But as far as like getting things repealed, I would hope that they could come up with a happy medium, possibly, or find a solution that's gonna maybe lower costs for healthcare, but also promote profit for these doctors, because it's the profit that encourages them to have lots more research done and become more progressive.
You just ramble on whenever you speak.
Yeah.
Nobody listens.
All right.
That was Kimball's thoughts on health.
That was my
Kimball's thoughts on
Dude.
healthcare. Steven is an idiot.
No. I didn't say he was an idiot. I mean, he's smart, but like, he just rambles on about stuff. Like, no.
Like, no? Okay. Let's move on from healthcare. Hit our second topic, minimum wage versus living wage. Who has the figure for what the minimum wage is now?
$7.29.
$7.25.
$7.25 is the current minimum
so.
wage.
I think that's the wrong one.
I thought it was $7.29.
All right, let's go around the circle and say what the ideal
This is a
minimum
circle?
wage should be. Ethan, go.
$7.25.
Like what it should be?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care. Like,
Kimball!
Give a number.
well, I mean, I think it just should depend on what job you have. Like the requirements that your job is.
So there should be a minimum wage for each kind of job. That's kind of what you're saying.
No, like in general, like if you're doing this type of work, then there should be like a minimum wage, like for labor and stuff like that.
So you're saying like per field of work, there should be a minimum wage in that specific field?
Well,
kind of like.
okay, but if
I
you
don't
think
know if
about
I'm
it,
saying
the
it right.
labor-intensive jobs are only paid on wages anyway, so it doesn't really matter for
No.
like salary jobs what the minimum wage is.
That's true.
All right, Steven.
I think the minimum wage should be $0.
Then you're gonna get somebody to pay you 5 cents for an hour.
Well, it just goes off of the fact that as you raise minimum wage, it means for that employer to make more profit, which is what it's all about for a business. Then that means he's got to raise the prices on the products he sells to make more money.
How much money did you make over the summer? What was your like how much money per hour did you make?
I made about 9.
All right, so say you made 2. Just say 2.
Mm-hmm.
Would you not be angry?
I would be angry,
Exactly.
but at the same sense, I had nothing else to do because it's a summer job.
Here's another
You're still
question.
working. You're still
Kimball.
spending your time there.
And
Kimball.
also, taxes
Steven.
on $2 would be like pointless.
So here's another question. What is the point of minimum wage?
What's the point? So
Yeah,
you don't get
what is
paid
the point?
5 cents an hour.
No.
Why was minimum wage created?
Minimum wage jobs were created to teach people certain skills that are useful in life, not for living purposes.
Can you not?
So Stephen, you would say that a minimum wage is not a living wage, and it should not be a living wage.
It should not be a living
No.
wage.
Correct.
So we're all.
I'm surprised that people can try to live off of minimum wage. I wouldn't think anybody would be stupid enough to do that.
It's not that they're stupid enough. It's just like it's difficult.
Well, they shouldn't have dropped out of high school.
Yeah.
If that's the only job you can get, then that probably means you dropped out of high school. You shouldn't have dropped out of high school because it's free.
Bingo.
That's true.
Well,
I mean, it ain't free, 'cause we gotta
Technically,
take
yeah, we
taxes.
got senior dues.
well, yeah, but
Technically, you can get away with not doing that in
Yeah.
some places.
it's all on
Some
a,
places.
the senior dues and stuff like parking passes is all on a school by school basis. You could argue that not getting a parking spot for $200
That's not
can save you that $60 you need for school pictures and for your cap and gown. So it all depends on what your expenditures are.
not saying that you need a party pass, though. I'm saying, like, you have to pay senior dues to graduate.
You don't have to pay senior dues. You only have to pay senior dues if you're going to participate in the senior picnics and senior breakfasts and stuff.
I need to graduate.
Well, yeah. But I imagine they would give you a cheaper
At least
deal.
here.
The school, I would imagine, would be willing to work with you.
I'm gonna throw this water bottle at you.
Nathaniel, care to move on?
Yeah, let's go ahead and hit the wage gap. As you know, the mythological wage gap is this apparent divide between males and females based on how much they make. There's been apparently upholded by some sources and debunked by others. So I think Steven's typing on his computer. What is the wage gap? It's like
$17.
It's like 17 cents on the dollar or something.
Yeah.
97, maybe 97 cents on the
I
dollar?
thought it was 70 cents on
Hang
the
on.
dollar.
yeah.
Okay, hang on. What is...
70 something cents on the dollar.
Okay.
I feel like
It
I
says
feel like I'm gonna
The
say something.
on Google, the question was, how much does a woman make to a man's dollar 2016? And it says, over half a century, the U.S. passed the Equal Pay Act. American women still face a substantial gender wage gap across the spectrum. Today, an average woman earns 80 and a half cents for every dollar a man earns.
So 80.
And that's a 2017,
So
2016 statistic. So roughly 80 cents to every man's dollar. That makes no sense.
So they're losing.
So,
20%.
and you said there was a law that said that you had to pay men and women equally, correct?
The Equal Pay Act.
The Equal Pay Act. So paying
And that was passed over half a century.
Okay, so paying a woman less than a man is against federal law, correct?
Correct.
But it still happens.
So why is there this thing called a wage gap?
Because
Between
women
genders.
choose the jobs that involve being paid less money.
Out of the 5 most high-paying majors,
I would
in
say that it's because they're...
in the 5 most highest-paid majors in college, men are a majority of the graduates from that take those majors.
What are
And
those
for
majors?
the lowest 5, it's 4 to 5 women go into those fields.
What are the those majors?
Is like engineering, something with math, basically like STEM programs. Those are the top 5, and the things like education and clergy are amongst the bottom. So, why do you think that men men try to get into the higher paying things compared to women?
I don't know.
I would say probably because, we have this... women have better qualities
We have
for
no
care.
diversity in this group whatsoever.
I mean, think about it. We have a lot more... I would think in America we have a lot more female teachers than we do men. As I've grown up, I've had far more female teachers than men, and teachers earn a wage that some argue is low.
All right, question. What do you consider a professor?
A professor is someone teaching at the college level, but that's a private. They're not paid by the government. They're paid by the university. Teachers are paid by the state government through people's taxes.
All right.
So that's why their wage is low, because if you start raising their wages, you raise our taxes. So that's not an apples to apples comparison.
All right. I was just asking.
Now, I have
Just
met
clear
some
it up.
teachers, like some people that are professors.
Yeah.
You know,
me too.
I mean, obviously, there's no gender per job.
Yeah.
It's just what field you go into. And I wonder if the wage gap also, or the wage gap statistics factor in the fact that women take maternal leave. Like my mom took maternal leave for 5 years to raise me, and she took off her job. But here's the thing: the way the state works, if you pick up your job before those 5 years, before like 6 years, she got back her sick leave, so she continues to work with the sick leave that she had 5 years prior.
All right, we will wrap up our investigation of the wage gap in the next episode. Stick around. This has been the Facts Don't Care About Your Feelings podcast, part 1. Thank you. Subscribe, like the video, and all that kind of stuff. Thanks.